Aurora had always been different from the other elves. While her people lived in tall crystal towers and followed ancient rules about who they could speak to and where they could go, she spent her days in the wild forests with creatures that most elves feared. Her two dragons were the most important beings in her life. Ember was large and powerful, with scales that looked like fire and wings that could block out the sun. Ash was smaller and quicker with silver scales that caught the light like mirrors. The day everything changed started like any other day. Aurora was walking through the ancient forest, collecting berries and flowers for her dragons. Ember flew above the trees, dancing in and out of the clouds. Ash flew beside her, making gentle sounds that only Aurora could understand. She loved these moments when it felt like the whole forest belonged just to her and her dragons. Then she heard it, a sound that did not belong in her peaceful world, a loud crash that split the sky open and brought smoke and fire down from the clouds. Aurora stopped walking and looked up. Something was falling. Something metal and strange and wrong. It crashed through the trees and hit the ground far away, throwing up dirt and broken branches into the air. Aurora ran toward the sound without thinking. Her dragons flew ahead of her, curious and protective. They had never seen anything like this before. When she reached the place where the metal thing had crashed, she saw that it was a ship. A spaceship. The kind of ship that she had only heard about in old stories that the oldest elves told. Stories about the times when visitors came from the stars. The ship was half buried in the earth and covered in smoke. Aurora could see that it had broken into pieces. Fire was starting to burn in some places, but slowly the flames were going out. She needed to see if anyone was inside. She needed to help. If there was anyone who needed help. She climbed up on top of the broken metal and looked through an open hole in the ship's side. Inside she could see strange machines and lights that were still blinking, though many of them were dark. And then she saw him, a being unlike anything she had ever seen before. He was lying on the floor, not moving, covered in dust and blood. He looked like the pictures of humans that she had seen in old human history books from her kingdom's library. He was a human. Aurora jumped down into the ship and moved carefully to the human. She was not afraid of him. She was worried that he might be dying. She touched his chest and felt his heart beating slowly but strongly. He was alive. His eyes were closed, and he was not moving, but he was breathing. She needed to get him out of this broken place. Using all her strength, Aurora pulled the human out of the ship. It was very hard because he was heavy, and she had to be careful not to hurt him more than he was already hurt. Her dragons helped her, using their strong bodies to support the human and carry him away from the burning ship. Ember breathed cool air on the fires to help stop the flames from spreading. It took a long time, but finally, they got the human to a safe place in a small clearing far from the crash site. Aurora sat beside the human and looked at his face. He was not young and he was not old. He had kind lines around his eyes, and even though he was hurt and covered in dirt, she could see that he was handsome. She had never seen a human before, and she was surprised by how much he looked like the pictures in the books, but also how different he was in real life. His skin was not pale like hers. His hair was dark and curly. His face was strong and brave-looking. She used water from the forest stream to wash his wounds. She found plants that her people had used for thousands of years to help heal injuries. She mixed them carefully and put them on his cuts and burns. Her dragons stayed close, watching the human with curious eyes. They seemed to know that this being needed help and protection. As the sun was going down and the forest was turning dark, the human opened his eyes. He looked up at Aurora, and for a moment he did not move or say anything. He just stared at her like he was trying to understand if he was dreaming or if this was real. Then he tried to sit up, but Aurora gently pushed him back down. In a voice that was soft and kind, she told him that he was safe now. She told him that his ship had crashed, and that she had found him and brought him to safety. She told him that she and her dragons would help him. She told him her name was Aurora. She asked him his name. The human's voice was weak and shaky when he answered. He said his name was Marcus. He said that he was a space explorer and that his ship had been caught in a storm. He did not know where he was. He did not know if he would be able to repair his ship or if he would be stuck here forever. He looked scared and confused. Aurora told Marcus that he was on a planet called Etheria, a world that most beings in the galaxy had forgotten or never knew about. She told him that he was welcome here, and that she would help him in any way she could. She told him about her dragons, and she told him that they had decided he was worth protecting. For a creature to be accepted by dragons was a very rare and special thing. Marcus tried to thank her, but his voice became very quiet, and his eyes closed again. He needed rest and healing time. Aurora sat beside him all through the night, making sure he stayed warm and comfortable. Ember lay on one side of him, and Ash lay on the other side, their warm bodies keeping the humans safe from the cold of the forest night. As Aurora watched over Marcus while he slept, she did not know that this moment would change everything about her life. She did not know that a human from the stars would become the most important person in her world. She only knew that he needed help and she was going to give it to him. Marcus woke up 3 days after the crash. His body hurt and he felt weak, but he was alive. He looked around and saw that he was in a cave, not in the broken remains of his ship. The cave was beautiful in a strange way, with crystals that hung from the ceiling and caught the light. Near him was Aurora, sitting and watching him with her bright eyes. As Marcus got stronger over the next weeks, Aurora taught him many things. She taught him how to find food in the forest that was safe to eat. She taught him which plants were good for medicine and which ones were dangerous. She taught him the sounds that the forest animals made and what those sounds meant. Most importantly, she taught him the special language of the dragons. Marcus had never imagined that dragons could talk, but they could. Not with words like humans used, but with a series of clicks and musical sounds that seemed to come from deep inside their bodies. Aurora spent many hours teaching Marcus how to make these sounds and what they meant. When he first made his first correct dragon sound, Ember came over to him and put his head down low so that Marcus could touch him. It was one of the best moments of Marcus's life. In return, Marcus told Aurora about his world. He told her about Earth and the galaxies beyond her sky. He told her about the cities that stretched for hundreds of miles and the ships that traveled between the stars. He told her about the science and technology that humans used to explore space. But as he told these stories, he realized that none of these things mattered as much as the simple beauty of what he was seeing here on Etheria. Aurora showed Marcus a place in the forest where a small animal was trapped in a hunter's net. The animal was hurt and scared. Using his ship's medical equipment that still worked, Marcus was able to help heal the animal. When they released it back into the forest, Aurora smiled at him in a way that made his heart feel like it was floating. She told him that not many humans understood that all life had value, and that his kindness showed that his heart was good. As the weeks turned into months, Marcus and Aurora became very close. They spent their days exploring the forest together, with Ember and Ash flying above them and showing them new places. They spent their nights watching the stars come out and talking about their dreams for the future. Marcus told her about his family far away in the galaxy, but he also told her that being with her and her dragons felt more like home than anywhere else he had ever been. One night, as they sat together on a high hill looking at the twin moons of Etheria, Aurora reached over and took Marcus's hand. She had been afraid that he would think this was too forward, but Marcus held her hand gently and told her that he had been hoping she would do this for a long time. They sat together in silence, holding hands and watching the moons cross the sky, and both of them knew that their connection was something that would last forever. But not everyone in Aurora's world was happy about their friendship. The elves of Ethereal Vale had ancient laws that said they could not help outsiders or let them stay in their lands. The other elves began to whisper about Aurora. They said she was breaking the old ways. They said that a human from the stars should not be trusted. They said that her dragons had been cursed because they had accepted someone who was not an elf. Aurora tried to explain to her people that Marcus was good and that he meant no harm, but many of them would not listen. The laws were very old and very strict, and no one had ever broken them before. Even the wise elders who normally listened to Aurora were turning away from her. Things were becoming dangerous for both Aurora and Marcus, and they knew that soon they would have to do something very difficult. The most difficult thing was that they had been told that they would have to meet with Queen Lyra, the ruler of all the elves. The queen lived in the highest tower of the kingdom and had ruled for 3,000 years. No one had ever seen her smile. She was known for being strict and cold, and many believed that her heart was made of ice or stone. Meeting with the queen was one of the most frightening things that Aurora could imagine, because if the queen decided against Marcus, then he would have to leave Etheria forever. The day came when Aurora and Marcus had to go to the throne room to meet Queen Lyra. Aurora was nervous in a way that she had never been before. Her hands were shaking as she and Marcus walked through the crystal towers of Ethereal Vale. Ember and Ash walked beside them, their eyes alert and protective. The other elves stared at them as they passed, and some of them looked angry. The throne room was the most beautiful and the most frightening place that Marcus had ever seen. The walls were made of pure crystal that caught the light and threw it everywhere. The floor was smooth and cold under his feet. At the far end of the room, on a throne made of woven starlight and ancient wood, sat Queen Lyra. She was old, very old, older than anything Marcus could imagine. But she was also beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with how she looked. She had a power around her that made the air feel different when she was near. Her eyes were ancient and wise and cold. They seemed to look right through Marcus and into his very soul. This was a being who had lived for 3,000 years and had seen things that most creatures could never understand. Queen Lyra studied Marcus without moving or speaking for what felt like a very long time. Finally, she spoke, and her voice was like ice breaking on a frozen lake. She asked Marcus questions. Where had he come from? What did he want from her people? Was he planning to bring his kind here to take over the planet? Did he think that the elves were primitive and weak? Marcus wanted to be very careful with his answers. He understood that his words could decide his entire future and Aurora's future too. He took a deep breath and told the queen the truth. He told her that he was lost and far from home. He told her that Aurora had saved his life, not once but many times. He told her that he had learned more about what it meant to be wise and good from 1 month with her people than he had learned in all his years. Traveling through space, he looked directly into the queen's ancient eyes, and he told her something that he believed with all of his heart. He said that the most advanced civilization in the galaxy was not the one with the best technology or the most power. The most advanced civilization was the one that showed the most compassion and kindness to all living things. He said that her people, the elves of Etheria, were the most advanced and beautiful beings he had ever met. The throne room became completely silent. Every elf held their breath. No one had ever heard a human speak to the queen in this way, with honesty and respect, but also with courage. No one had ever told the queen that she was wrong about anything, because no one was brave enough to do it. Then something happened that no one expected. Queen Lyra smiled. It was not a small smile or a fake smile. It was a real smile, warm and genuine, that completely changed her ancient face. A blush appeared on her pale cheeks, and for a moment she looked away, almost shy. It was as if someone had turned a light on inside of her that had been dark for 3,000 years. Queen Lyra told Marcus that he could stay as long as he needed on Etheria. She told the other elves that no laws would be broken by his presence, and that anyone who had a problem with this would have to answer to her. She looked at Aurora, and she smiled again, and Aurora knew that her friend was going to be okay. As Marcus and Aurora left the throne room, they heard something that no one in Ethereal Vale had heard before. The queen was laughing. Not a small laugh, but a real, happy laugh that echoed through the crystal towers. The other elves looked at each other in shock. Something had changed in their world. Something good had changed. And it had started with a human from the stars and an elf woman who had been brave enough to break the ancient laws. After the meeting with the queen, everything became different. Marcus did not have to hide or worry about being sent away. He was accepted by the elves of Ethereal Vale, though not everyone was happy about it at first. But slowly, as the weeks and months went by, more and more of the elves began to see that Marcus was good and kind, and that he truly cared about their world. Marcus spent time repairing his ship, but as he worked on it, something important happened. He realized that he did not want to leave. He had come to this beautiful planet by accident, and now he could not imagine going back to the life he had lived before. He thought about his family and his old home, but his heart told him that his true home was here, with Aurora and her dragons and the forests of Etheria. Aurora helped Marcus make a very difficult decision. She told him that he did not have to choose between his two worlds completely. Using the communication equipment on his ship that still worked, Marcus was able to send messages to his family and to the space authorities that he worked for. He told them that he had found a place where he wanted to stay. He told them that he was safe and happy. It took a long time to explain everything, but finally his family understood, and they gave him permission to stay. Aurora and Marcus decided to build a permanent home together. They chose a beautiful valley that was surrounded by tall mountains and filled with trees and rivers and flowers. Ember and Ash loved this place immediately. The dragons helped them gather stones and wood to build a house that was part human structure and part natural cave dwelling. It was a place that belonged to both of their worlds. They taught each other more and more as the seasons changed. Marcus used his technology to create tools that helped Aurora and the other elves with their work. He created water filters that made clean water easy to get. He created lights that did not need fire and did not hurt the forest. But he also learned from Aurora how to live in a way that respected nature and did not try to control or hurt it. One day, Marcus and Aurora decided to try something that no one had ever done before. They invited both the elves and the dragons to come to their valley. They wanted to create a place where humans, elves, and dragons could live together and learn from each other. Many of the elves thought this was a strange idea, and many of them were afraid at first. But Aurora was respected and loved by her people, and they trusted her. When the first group of elves arrived at the valley, they were amazed by what they saw. The dragons were not the terrible, dangerous creatures that the old stories said they were. They were intelligent and kind and wise. The elves began to talk to the dragons using the sounds that Marcus and Aurora had taught them. Slowly, the dragons began to trust the elves, just as they had trusted Marcus and Aurora. Ember and Ash became teachers, and they shared the ancient knowledge of the dragons with anyone who wanted to learn. They taught about the history of Etheria and about the magic that lived in the forests and mountains and rivers. They taught about respect and about the importance of protecting all living things. More and more elves came to learn, and soon there was a school in the valley where both elves and humans could study together. Marcus worked on creating gardens that grew food for both the elves and the dragons. He built shelters that were beautiful and safe. He used his scientific knowledge to help solve problems, but he also learned to listen to the wisdom of the elves and the dragons, who understood many things that his science could not explain. Aurora saw that her dream was coming true. She had always believed that different kinds of beings could live together peacefully, and now she was seeing it happen. She watched as Marcus became a real part of her world, and as her world became his world too. She saw that being brave enough to help a stranger, even when it meant breaking the old laws, had brought more good to her people than anything else had in a long time. Years passed, and the valley that Marcus and Aurora had built together became known throughout all of Etheria as a place of peace and learning. Travelers from distant lands came to see this amazing place where humans lived with elves and dragons. More humans began to arrive, carefully and slowly, and they learned to respect the world of Etheria just as Marcus had learned. Marcus and Aurora's bond grew stronger with each passing year. They did not have a ceremony like other beings did when they committed to spend their lives together. Instead, on a night when both of Etheria's moons were full and bright, they stood together in the place where they had first met. In the forest where Ember and Ash had found Marcus after his crash, they made promises to each other without any words. Aurora told Marcus without speaking that she would love him forever and that she would always believe in him. Marcus told Aurora without speaking that she had saved his life and his soul, and that being with her was the greatest thing that had ever happened to him. Ember and Ash stood beside them and sang their ancient dragon songs, which were songs of joy and promise and forever. After that night, Aurora and Marcus became even more dedicated to their work in the valley. They had children, one by one, and these children were the first beings in the galaxy who were part human and part elf. They had the wisdom of both their parents' peoples. They had the love of Ember and Ash, who became like grandparents to them. These children grew up understanding that being different from others was not something to be afraid of, but something to be proud of. Queen Lyra visited the valley often. Every time she came, she seemed lighter and happier. She began to smile more and more often. She told Aurora that meeting Marcus had taught her something that 3,000 years of ruling had not taught her. She said that the greatest power was not the power to control others or to make people follow rules. The greatest power was the power to believe in others and to help them become who they were meant to be. As the years became decades, Marcus and Aurora's valley grew into a whole community. There were schools and gardens and libraries. There were places where humans and elves and dragons lived side by side and learned from each other. Scientists from Marcus's people came to study Etheria and to share knowledge. Elves traveled through the stars to visit other worlds and to tell them about the beautiful thing that had happened on their planet. When Marcus became old, with gray in his dark curly hair and lines on his face that told stories of a long and happy life, he would sit with Aurora in the evenings and watch the sunset. Ember and Ash, who seemed to live forever, would rest their great heads on their laps. Aurora, who moved through the years with the grace of the elves, would hold Marcus's hand, just as she had done so many years before. They would talk about the journey they had taken together. They would remember the day when a broken ship fell from the sky and changed everything. They would remember the fear and the doubt and the moments when they were not sure if their love could survive the differences between their worlds. They would remember the Queen's smile and the first day when an elf and a human were welcomed as one in ethereal veil. When travelers asked them how it all started, Aurora and Marcus would tell the story of that crash in the forest. They would tell about courage and kindness and the willingness to see the good in someone who was different. They would tell about dragons who chose to protect a stranger. They would tell about a queen who was capable of changing after 3,000 years. Most importantly, they would tell travelers that love and understanding could cross any distance, could bridge any difference, could make even the coldest heart warm. They would say that the greatest adventure in any universe was not traveling between stars, but opening your heart to someone completely different and discovering that they were exactly what you needed all along. And as the two moons rose over Etheria, and Ember and Ash sang their ancient songs, Marcus and Aurora knew that the love they had found would echo through time and through worlds, teaching all who came after them that being different was not something to fear, but something beautiful and worthy of celebration.